Okay, so I'll go ahead and get started if that's okay, Elvar. Okay. Well, thank you guys for coming. My name is Kevin Ahern, and I'm a professor of biochemistry and biophysics at Oregon State. And I am here to tell you about a project that I've been working on. It's sort of a strategy for teaching biochemistry, and some resources that I've created to give to my students. Everything I'm going to show you today is free. So there's nothing that it costs anybody anything to do. If you want them, you're welcome to them as well. In fact, I had some grade school kids here earlier, and the parents wanted some of the materials. So if you want some of the stuff, you're more than welcome to do it. The title of my talk is Biochemistry Free and Easy, and that's actually the title of an electronic textbook that my wife, Indira Rajagopal, and I wrote that has been very popularly received. And it's part of a bigger picture, as I will show you, talking about what I think is the way that we need to be thinking about teaching, not only biochemistry, but teaching everything that we teach at the university. So I'm going to start out with some background talking about what actually is kind of gloom and doom as far as universities go. And then I'll show you some examples of the things that I worked with. And so I probably won't take the full hour. I would guess I'll probably be done by about, I would say this, but I probably did 5:45 or so, if that's all works out. Okay. Okay. So we all know that the world is changing, and we've all seen the world change. And it's changing extraordinarily rapidly. And the changes are apparent at all levels, and I'll show you some examples earlier. But some of these are very disturbing. As we look at, I'm a biochemist. I'm required by law to show a graph. Okay, so I have to show you graphs. All right. And what this graph shows is the projector doesn't do colors very well, but what the graph actually shows is this line that's coming down in each case is the amount of state funding that's being provided at various levels of higher education. So here's a research university, a master's university, a bachelor's university, or community college. And no surprise in every level that funding, and this goes up to about 2010. Okay, so this data is a little old actually. We can see that funding is falling, but what we also see rising in each case is the amount that the students are paying. So as state revenues fall and universities have to exist and they have to pay the bills, the only way to make that up is with tuition. And so for the first time in 2010, we saw that students were paying more in tuition than the state was providing to students. This was true for research and master's university. It's now happened for bachelor's, and it's probably soon going to happen with community colleges as well. So this is disturbing, especially as we look at what the value of an education is and how education is changing lives. And I say that from my own perspective as somebody who was a first generation in college. My parents, my father never went to high school. My mother graduated high school. She got married at 17 to my father, and the way out of that, I grew up in a rural town in Illinois, was to get an education. And I'm very grateful that I was able to afford an education and to go and to do that. So very much in the education corner. So we worry about people being priced out of an education. Since 1995, we've had very stable cost of living. We haven't had tremendous change in the prices that we pay. We also haven't had a tremendous change in the salaries that people have earned. But tuition and fees at universities have grown 130% in that time. Okay, as I said, middle class incomes have stagnated. The middle class are the class that's, of course, benefiting most from the education. And student debt is skyrocketing. This isn't news. Everybody knows about this. There's, as of 2010, $966 billion of student debt. People keep saying it's the next bubble, and the student debt today is well over $1 trillion. So it's an enormous concern. So what's happened is state appropriations have dropped, is that we've made up the gap by having people take loans. I mean, that's what's happened, and that's really been a very unfortunate thing. What's that? That's right. They are not dischargeable in bankruptcy. And in fact, this is it's a very good point that you make. It's Alan, right? Alan. Because the message to kids is just sign this and you go to school. And boy, you know, you've got to connect the dots between what you're signing, what you're going to pay, and what you're going to earn. And, you know, those things are all there. Oh, absolutely. Because the federal government will garnish your wages until you get everything paid back. There's no ifs, ands, ors, or buts about that. So, and bankruptcy, as you say, is not going to get you out of it. What's been disturbing for me, besides the tuition costs and so on and so forth, but that hits to me at a very more of a personal level, is the cost of textbooks. The cost of textbooks are absolutely astronomical. Okay, they are currently 26% of tuition costs at a public university. Okay, ebooks, which are being pushed by the publishers as ways of addressing this problem of increasing textbook costs, are really very deceptive. Yeah, that's great. A little light would be good, I think. Yeah. That way we may not need as much coffee to stay awake. They're not really the savings that they appear to be on the surface. Okay. And so this figure shows the percent cost since 1978 of books, medical services, and home prices. So we all know what's happened with healthcare costs. We all know what's happened with home prices. And we see of all of these, the ones that have risen the most have been textbooks, 812% in that period of time. Okay? So what's happened is there's a lot of people making a lot of money off of kids going to school. And the kids are going in debt to pay these bills. So I say that what we are in the middle of right now is a perfect storm, okay? And perfect storms aren't good, all right? Tuition is rising faster than inflation. Textbook prices are rising faster than tuition, okay? Student debt, no surprise, is skyrocketing, okay? So amidst this backdrop of what's happening with tuition and what's happening with textbooks is that there's a lot of concern about what's happening in education. So I want to illustrate it with a couple of examples. One of the examples you see on the screen, we all know about Borders Bookstore. We all know what happened to Borders Bookstore. And Borders Bookstore was a great brick-and-mortar bookstore. They sold books, and that's what they did, and people went and they bought the books, and I loved Borders Bookstore. We have one in Corvallis, and I used to go to Borders Bookstore all the time to just browse through the books. We all like that sort of browsing through the books. In 2001, I believe it was, Borders said, okay, well, the future is the internet, and so we should get involved in the internet, and we should be doing electronic books. And so they started a group to do electronic books, and they dabbled in it. And for a period of time, it looked interesting. And finally, Borders says, you know, there's really no future in electronic books. Okay? Well, we all know what happened to Borders, right? They didn't see the sky falling. And interestingly, Borders, when they got out of the electronic book business, sold it off. Okay? They sold off. What's that? They sold off the electronic books. Did anybody know who they sold them to? Nobody knew. What's that? Okay. They sold it to Amazon. And when Amazon bought it in 2001, they picked it up for nothing. Okay. And the people leading Borders had no vision. They had no idea that electronic books were going to do what they did. Well, ultimately, of course, Amazon ate Borders. Okay. Barnes & Noble barely managed to skim by because they held on to their electronic books division, but Borders didn't do that. Okay. So the New World Order was that. We've seen, of course, disappearance along the same lines of record stores. We know what's happened with record stores. You don't go anywhere and see a record store. Or actually, that's not completely true, but they're almost all gone. There's still the select, eclectic ones that are still around. And of course, they all got replaced by this little device known as the iPod that was Apple's contribution to this overall thing. The same thing is happening, of course, right now with newspapers. There's not a newspaper in the country that isn't publishing a smaller version of itself than they published 10 years ago, replaced, of course, by what I'm doing this presentation on, an iPad. Okay? So, what's that? Oh, no, feel free. I like to keep this conversational, so this is not me lecturing, you know. Oh, I got, okay. You know, I didn't know that. Okay, well, that's, I'll take your word on it. So in view of this, I think a lot of people are asking the question, you know, are universities next? Are what we're seeing or what we have seen happen electronically with the rest of the world going to happen to universities? Because there's all kinds of online stuff that's out there. I have many myself, as I will show you as I'm going through. Are universities the next victims of this process? Well, to think about that, I like to think about universities as they have existed. And it's what I call Education 1.0. Education 1.0 is what I think of doctors within borders, right? Okay? So the borders for doctors were the bounds of the campus. That was where you worked, right? You had buildings, and you had brick and mortar, and people came, and they gave lectures, and students sat, and they drank coffee, and they slept, or they did whatever they did, right? But they had to physically go to a specific place to do that, okay? The physical presence was required, okay? There were schedule limitations, okay? You've been in college, you know, hey, you can't take 2 classes at the same time. Maybe if you have a job, you may have to juggle that job with what's going on. If you are, as many students increasingly are, an older student and you already have a life and you want to get an education, you have to change that world that you're living in. You may have to physically move a fair distance away, bring the family, change everything so that you can physically be there at the times that everything is offered. Okay? So that was Education 1.0. All right? Today we have what I call Generation I. All right? Generation I are what refer to... You guys are a great crowd. You know, I should come and do this more often. In fact, if you want me to come back anytime, I'll be happy to do that. All right? They are free range, and they're tech savvy, and they are like those little chickens running around. We think of free range chickens. That's what they are, right? Okay? So well, that's a good question. That's a very good question, and that's part of what I want to address here. You know, what you will see, and since you brought up the point, Alan, I'll say something about that here. I do a lot of stuff, and I put all my stuff on the internet. The reason I'm videotaping this, I'm going to put this on YouTube. Because I do everything I do, I put it on YouTube, so people can watch it. Okay? And when you think about what's out there, and you think of the resources that's out there, the most common question I get is, well, will students come to your lectures if you put your lectures on YouTube, which is what I do. Okay? And I said, you know, that I can never plan as an instructor to teach, to do anything about the worst students. I can't do it. It doesn't matter if I put it on the internet. It doesn't matter if I'm standing up there droning on and on. It doesn't matter how I do it. I'm always going to have students who will never want to learn and who will never try to do that. But for that group of students who do want to learn and who may have limitations or whatever, that's why my stuff's out there. So I honestly don't see a big difference, and I've done it both ways, both the electronic version and the non-electronic version of my classes. And there's not a big difference in the in the percentage of goof-offs that I have in one versus the other. Given the opportunity, people will always choose not to learn if they choose not to. And that number doesn't seem to increase with electronics. But for the students who want to learn and may have other limitations, this opens doors. So that's why this is important. It's a very good point that you make. Very, very good point that you make. Okay. They're mobile, okay? So, like I said, the person that has to pack up everything and go to the university, that isn't the case anymore for many disciplines. We have a thing at OSU called eCampus. Most universities have this already set up. And I went to the eCampus graduation. We have a graduation ceremony for the students who graduate from eCampus. And there are students who come to the graduation because it's the first time they've set foot on the OSU campus. Now think about that. Okay? They're mobile, all right? They have other things going on in their lives. Okay? The students, especially the younger students, socialize in networks, okay? I'm on Facebook, all right? I have, I think, 2,000 plus friends on Facebook because students, yeah, it's true. Students see me and they friend on Facebook because that's what they want. Of course, there's all kinds of other Twitter and so forth that's out there. But that's how they know how to connect with each other. Well, the universities saw some of these things coming, and so they put together what I call Education 2.0. And Education 2.0, we're pretty much getting past this now. Okay? Education 2.0 meant that every university was going to provide some things online. Okay? So OSU started doing this back in, around the early 2000s. We had a fair number of eCampus courses that were there. And we, of course, still have eCampus courses. When you ask the academic leaders, and I'm talking specifically about presidents of universities, okay, 2/3 of them say that online instruction value equals classroom value. That was something they would not have said 10 years ago. And many students would not have said that, okay? The Education 2.0 was mostly attractive to students, and this is a very important point, to students at host institutions to complete degrees. When I started teaching on the eCampus, probably 2/3 to 3/4 of my students were OSU students. That is, they had started at OSU. I teach a 400-level biochemistry course. They had started at OSU. They had gotten to that last term or two, and rather than take one course at the university, they go back home and live with mom and dad, save money instead of paying the bills, which makes a lot of sense, okay, and pick up whatever courses that they needed by eCampus if they could do that, okay. And so that was the vast majority of students that I saw in that process, okay. That has changed and is changing drastically, okay. Students now, because they're mobile, because they have electronic connections, are looking for things anywhere and everywhere. And so if universities focus on serving those students that are their own students and they're not out there trying to get in that bigger group of students, they're going to miss. And this is one of the messages that I have about what I have to say today. Sure.
If you've got students that are picking and choosing courses from this institution and that institution,
Yep.
I mean, catalogs are built so that you've got prerequisites before you take this course. You need to have this.
Yep.
So that the courses build a ladder. Not like if you're taking courses sort of piecemeal.
Yep.
How do you guarantee?
Yeah. So I'll repeat the question since the unit be picked up on the microphone here. So the question was basically students who are picking courses from different universities, higgledy-piggledy, aren't necessarily taking things in the right sequence that they would need to, and it's hard to assess if they've had the prerequisites they need to take a course. Is that a fair assessment of your question? It is a bit of a problem, okay? There are, fortunately, something out there called articulation agreements. And so articulation agreements are where different universities have sat down and says, okay, our biology 211 is equivalent to your biology 132. And so where there are articulation agreements, there's a pretty reasonable consensus that these meet those requirements to go forward. And those articulation agreements are actually, because of the kinds of things we're talking about here, are really becoming much more enmeshed. So some of that concern about having the right courses as prerequisites are going away. To give you an idea, in my course, just a second, I teach a 400-level biochemistry course, and the only prerequisite for my course is organic chemistry. So when students contact me from Iraq, I have students in Iraq, for example, when they contact me and say, hey, I want to take your course, my only question to them is, have you had organic chemistry? And if they have, then I say, okay, you're good to go. Nancy, your question? Very good question. Yeah. So how do you deal with the labs? Okay. There are some very innovative approaches to doing labs, but in my opinion, labs online will never, if you want, never say never, but never work. Okay. So the novel approaches people are taking to labs are having people go to a university for a short period of time where you get a condensed version of a laboratory. Our chemistry department at OSU, for example, has weekends where students who are electronically taking courses anywhere in the Northwest, all over the Northwest, will come in for a weekend and on a weekend get, intense lab. Yeah, And so those kinds of things are being done, but they, again, require more of a physical presence to do that. I think what's going to happen with those over time is you're going to see universities have partnerships with other universities. So a student that's taking, maybe an electronic version of a biochemistry course might take a biochemistry lab at Texas A&M where we have an agreement or something. So something like that I think is going to happen with time. We're not quite at that point, but we're getting there. But labs are a totally different thing. So I'm not talking about labs here today, by the way. I'll say that first off. Okay. So online growth. All right. Now, if we look at what's happened online, and this curve isn't perhaps the best one to show, and again, it only goes to about 2010. The top line shows the growth overall of students in classroom classes. The bottom one shows the growth of students taking at least one online course. Well, if you do the slope of the lines, what you'll see is that the bottom one is increasing faster than the top one is, and this has been accelerating in recent years. So what's going to happen at some point is we're going to see the lines cross, and the online is going to take that over. So if we don't pay attention and we don't address needs of online students, and by this I mean getting out there and grabbing and attracting these students, then we're going to lose out. And this is part of my gloom and doom. Okay, so we've got to make sure that we get out there and do that. Well, I want to talk about Education 3.0. Okay, so Education 3.0 involves free mobile content. Okay, it involves open educational resources. Have any of you heard about OERs? Are you familiar with the term at all? Okay, so let me explain it. So there is out there right now a tremendous volume of free educational resources that are available. If you go to YouTube, for example, type in biochemistry, okay, you'll be astonished at the number of some junk, but the number of actually high-quality things that are out there. You can pick any subject that's taught, and you'll find them there. Students know about something called the Khan Academy. The Khan Academy is a very famous, mostly lower division courses, basic writing, basic English, basic philosophy, basic chemistry, basic math, sorts of things, where they can watch videos of experts, talking in these various areas. There's a movement now at OSU to participate in what's called open educational resources for textbooks. I'm going to show you a textbook that my wife and I wrote to deal that is very popular. But we're not the only ones. There's many people that are providing these sorts of resources, and they're free. So my textbook is 100% free. Okay. People probably have heard of MOOCs. MOOCs are massive open online courses. There are many of them that are out there. Udacity is one. Coursera. There's others, where major universities have said, okay, well, we're going to put a lot of our content out there available for free. Again, YouTube is a great medium for dispersing things or distributing things, and so they've done that. MIT actually started this back in about 2000, where they put everything that they had online. Now, having seen some of what they have there, even though it's MIT, I have to say it's not the best teaching method, okay? So it's dated, all right? But nonetheless, they are out there for people who want them, okay? There are some of the universities that are involved in these various consortia. There's the consortia themselves. And one that doesn't get a lot of publicity, but actually is an enormous player in this, is iTunes U. iTunes U is an offshoot of Apple's iTunes, and as you'll see when I show you the numbers in a bit, it's not a minor player. In fact, my stuff is on iTunes U because I find that's a very good medium for distributing things. If we look at that, MIT's OpenCourseWare, which was MIT's thing, they had 70 million visitors. Okay, if we look at iTunes U, by comparison, has 100 million educational downloads per year. Now, you hear these things about MOOCs, and the most common thing that you will hear about MOOCs, people say, oh, nobody ever finishes them. To which I say, that's not the point. That's not the point. The people who are saying MOOCs will never succeed because nobody finishes them are the same people who told Borders, you don't need an electronic bookstore. We're in the early days of this, folks. We're in the very early days, okay? The point isn't people finishing a MOOC. So a MOOC is an online class, okay? Free online class, all right? The point is people who want educational material use it for what they need and what they want. And they're not paying. Absolutely, you know? So this is important to keep in mind. And I find when I talk myself blue in the face at the university about this, okay? And I'm very much a fan of what OSU does, and I'm a very big OSU booster, but there are things like this. And OSU's not alone. That's the most common thing you read. Oh, MOOCs, nobody ever finishes them. It's like, no, that's not it. They're going to take you over if you're not careful with this. Okay, so, all right, so we have distinct online models, all right? MOOCs, other online resources, they're open access and free. And then that last point, they are quasi-credentialed. Who trusts a degree from a MOOC? Well, no, MOOCs don't offer degrees for one. And then how do you verify that a person has learned something, right? Big problem, very big problem, okay? eCampus is the other model, and the other model is it's not free, it's tuition-based, okay? And they offer full college credentials. So my eCampus class, if you take my biochemistry classes online, you're going to get biochemistry credit exactly the same as somebody who took my classroom class. Well, which one? How does it go? Well, maybe it's not one or the other. Maybe it's not one or the other. All right? Just to emphasize the differences, online resources, free education, no credentials. Today's world values credentials, and credentials cost. And there doesn't seem to be a good way around that. And it's because of accreditation. Okay? Accreditation requires investment, requires resources, et cetera. Okay. So what I want to talk about briefly is what I call IU. All right? IU. It's an integrated hybrid approach to the MOOCs and to the eCampus. So it's a sort of a hybrid of the two. So I say 2.0 plus 3.0 equals 4.0. All right? My math is not good. It's what I call Doctors Without Borders. All right? And Doctors Without Borders, we have a university without physical bounds. Well, that's an eCampus model, if you ever heard of one. It has electronic routes. Okay? It's easily discoverable. This is absolutely central to what I'm emphasizing here. Easily discoverable by mobile, free-range learners. That means you've got to be where they are. If you're not out there where they are, they don't know you exist. Now, when I started videotaping my lectures for OSU back in the early 2000s, okay, I started putting them on YouTube. And OSU says, oh, no, we've got a much better system. We've got this thing called Video Manager. You take your videos, you put them into Video Manager, and it's free. And we'll put them into video, and we're putting all of the university stuff into Video Manager. And I said, you're nuts. Who knows where Video Manager is? Who knows? Have you ever heard of Video Manager? Nobody's heard of it, right? Not only that, it doesn't work right. Okay? I have more trouble with things on Video Manager than I have with anything, all right? I said, you're nuts. Well, what's happened is it took OSU 10 years, but they have finally learned Video Manager is a piece of shit, to put it bluntly, okay? And as a consequence, anybody who's looking for something and they go looking on YouTube, which is where people are looking, they don't see OSU stuff unless they see my stuff. I am the only one that's got a presence on YouTube, okay? That's a problem, big problem, okay? So we got to be where the students are. If we're not there, we're in trouble, all right? And this model that I'm going to describe to you is sustainable because it has both free and paid components. That's the hybrid part of what's there, okay? Well, it is a hybrid approach, as I said. There's my little hybrid joke. It's important to recognize that our audience is not our own students. Our audience is everybody that's out there. If we're not international, we're not doing it right, okay? Has free lectures in YouTube. Has a free book that I'm going to describe to you in just a bit, Biochemistry Free and Easy. Has a free course on iTunes. It has free entertainment called Metabolic Melodies, which I'll sing one or two to you. Okay? And this is the traditional university part of it. It has tuition-based credentials, okay, that are here. Now, I'll just briefly show you. This is what my course actually looks like. This is My biochemistry course is one I taught in the spring term. Students go to my biochemistry course, say, okay, well, when I lecture, I don't lecture from PowerPoint, for example, all right? I use HTML because with HTML, I can click on something and go there, and I can say, okay, well, I'm going to tell you all about these macromolecules, and here they are. It's not sequential where I have to go here, 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 and then I discover, oh, I got to back up 6, and then, you know, it doesn't have to happen. The students have access to this, so they've got all the figures before the lecture. They can download them and use them as they are. People hear about flipping a classroom. This is a flipped classroom. Okay? They've got access to everything before the class is there. They have access to all the figures, which I shouldn't have clicked that, but I just did. They have access, okay. At the end of each lecture, I write highlights that summarize what the important points were. The students have access to all that. And students can watch the video of me lecturing on that topic. Okay? So they click on that, they go, and they see, here I was lecturing on Introduction to Biochemistry. Ah. Oh. Okay. I won't torture you. They're very enthusiastic. That was the first day. They're very enthusiastic on the first day. Okay? That changes. Okay. So, but they can go back, they can watch that. For students for whom English is a second language, or for students, I talk fast. You guys probably see that already. I talk fast. Students can go back. They can review as much as they want with that. So that works well for them. Okay? Okay, so that's the general structure. I'll show you a couple things here. The first thing I want to show you about is the book that my wife and I wrote. So Biochemistry Free and Easy is the name of the book. And its name literally is true because we do give the book away for free. To show you a little bit about that book, it's an electronic-based book. And I want to just, let's see, pull up. Okay, so here's some, let's see, that's not what I want. Okay, here's a good example right here. Okay, so doing it electronically, I can do some things electronically I can't do in a traditional textbook. Okay, you'll notice this guy's rotating, right? Okay, I can zoom in, I can rotate it any way that I want, and in biochemistry, structure and function are absolutely critical. So if we look at this guy right here, this is the structure of a hemoglobin, and right in the middle of this thing right here, that's where oxygen binds. And students can see that and say, oh, wow, I know what Kevin's talking about when he's talking about the center of the donut. Okay? They can see those, they can manipulate them themselves, and make that go. Here's another one. This is myoglobin, which is a related protein, okay, and so forth. Okay. All the things that are here, of course, you enlarge by clicking on them, etc. You can take anything here. So let's say here's, I don't know, find any word in here that you want to see. So how about entropy? Okay, so here's, what's that? All right. So yeah, causes, there you go. So entropy, technical term, okay. So what is the technical term? I can search for entropy. It'll tell me all the places in my book where the word appears. It will also go and pull up the Wikipedia entry on that particular word. And a student who wants to learn more about that can read and say, okay, now I understand what entropy is. Entropy is a measure of disorder in the universe is what it is, basically. So, you know, scientifically, Wikipedia is in pretty good shape. There are, the places where Wikipedia has problems are more in the political arena or in personal, pop culture, yeah. So in science, Wikipedia is a pretty darn good resource. What's that? Some history stuff. Yeah. People have modified views of history as well. But for the most part, scientifically, Wikipedia is great. But you're right. We do have to have concern about the quality of sources that we're using. All right. So coming back to the book. Okay, so we've got all these things here. I'm not going to show you, but I've got on here a variety of exams, so students can take exams. They can see the questions, they can get the answers to the key and so forth. And I'll show you that briefly in the iTunes U part. And as I said, I also like to write songs about biochemistry. So students can learn musically. hemoglobin's moving. Oh. So the point is hemoglobin changes structure. It picks up the bait, changes itself from T to R state. Hemoglobin's moving. All right. Okay, I won't torture you guys with that, but what happened here? It's supposed to stop. There we go. That's unusual. I didn't stop. That's not me singing, by the way. As you can tell, I can't sing worth a crap. Which is why, and I sing this to my students in my class. When I'm in my class, every lecture I give, I have a different song. I have 180 of these songs that I've written, and they're all to popular tunes that students can learn and so forth. And I think they like my singing because it is so bad. So I'll get up in front of them. And if you find my videos on YouTube, you will see that they are very much like that. Okay, so the book is a basic book in biochemistry available to, as I say, available to students for free. And it's aimed at very basic levels. So it's appropriate, for example, for students as early as high school who've had some chemistry, all the way up to this class where I actually use the book. Is called BB 350, which is an elementary biochemistry course. My wife and I are in the process of writing a brand new book called Biochemistry Free for All that'll be for a little higher level of biochemistry, and it'll also be free when we get that out there. So that free component we think is very important for students to be able to access it and to be able to see it and use it. We released the book in August of 2012, and since then we've had 90,000 downloads around the world. So it's been very popular. Okay. Well, the other thing I'm just going to briefly show you, and I said I'd be done by 5:45, and I'm not quite there, but I will hopefully, is iTunes U. Okay. I didn't mean to do that. All right. iTunes U is another way of organizing this information. You saw my things on my class page. This shows the structure of biochemistry for a pre-medical set of pre-medical students. They can learn, if you look on the left side, I point there and you can't see it, but on the left side you can see all the different topics that I cover in my biochemistry class. And it's all the same things that you saw, in fact, on that last figure where I had my class page, but now they're organized in a little different fashion. You can see it in the exact order that the students take it in my classroom class. You can see the exams. So if you decide, for example, okay, I've learned as much as I want to learn, let's say I'll go do glycolysis, and here's glycolysis, and I can see the lecture, okay? So it'll take you to the YouTube video for that lecture, and they can watch that lecture if they want to. They can also see my summary of all the different things that I talked about in that lecture, where they can take that home with them. And they can also access the material in the book. I'm not going to click on the link there where it says Biochemistry Free and Easy. So that links directly to the material in the book that's on that subject. When they've completed a certain section, they can say, okay, now I'll take my exam, and they can go here and see the review session that I did for my students where I answered questions, and they can review for that, and then they can take the exam. And this is just an exam that they take for themselves. Nobody else sees it, but they can see they answer the questions, go through, do all these things. This is exactly one exam that I gave to my class at one time where the students had to answer that. And then when they're done with that, they can say, okay, what were the correct answers? And so now they get the key, and they can pull that up. There it is. The questions with, now in red, all the correct answers on there. So they can see how well they did and so forth. And what a lot of students are doing is they're discovering my lectures on YouTube. They're in a variety of places, and they're watching these lectures, and they go, gosh, maybe I can take this class from him. What's it like to take a class from him? Well, they take it, and now they can take the exam, and they can see how well they're doing, and they actually know before they take my class what's it going to be like. Okay? So they're testing the water very, very effectively before they come. And so this has proven to be a very, very useful tool to get students interested. Okay. Well, briefly, that's iTunes University. So what I want to do now is just sort of summarize this model that I've described to you, that I've put together. So the model says that if we look out in the world, all around the world, we have students all over the world who are available to take the classes. Okay? My material on YouTube has been viewed 2.3 million times since I've had it out there. YouTube is where the students are, and YouTube is 100% free advertising. Okay? That is, I don't allow ads on there. The only ads I allow on there are the fact that it links to my stuff. So you don't see ads on my stuff. You only see links to my materials. But those materials bring students now to my eCampus classes, and it's done for free. YouTube doesn't charge me a thing to put that out there. Okay? The book's had 90,000 downloads to date. iTunes U, I've got 17,000 students on iTunes U right now. Okay? And the Metabolic Melodies, I don't know the exact number on that, but a conservative estimate is we've had 300,000 downloads of the songs. Okay? And what's happened with each of these, and this was part of the design, is that they're all interconnected. Okay? If you watch my YouTube, you will be informed about my book. If you get my book, you'll be informed about iTunes U. They all point to each other very interconnectedly. And so what happens with that, then, is that these bring internet students an awareness, and they're bringing them into my eCampus classes. So I'm at a university. I need to generate student income. If I don't generate student income, university doesn't exist. So internet students translate into students registered for credit courses, and of course credit courses come with tuition dollars. So the hybrid model is working. This is a figure that's actually slightly out of date. It shows the amount of money that my eCampus class has generated just for my department. This is just for my department, okay? So starting in 2008, we were about $45,000. By 2009, we're over 50, 2010. 2013 was last year, and that was an estimate when we drew it, okay? It turned out that in 2013, the eCampus income to my department alone was over $300,000. This year, we're projecting it's going to be well over $400,000, okay? The state support for my department, okay, the state support for my department is about $1.8 million. This is generating about 1/4, all by itself, what the state is bringing in, okay? So, very pleased with the hybrid model. And the last thing I want to do is hammer the point home. This is what I do with my students, is I have a song at the end of every lecture I give, okay? So this is a song that's to the tune of something that you've heard this tune before, if you're as old as I am, which maybe none of you are, but you probably have heard this tune before. And you're going to sing it with me. Please sing it with me. It goes. A course is a source, of course, of all the knowledge that we endorse. A major force for better or worse is the campus distance ed. Source, a college source. There are a few standards to be enforced. The long and shorts we reinforce. The campus distance ed. A classroom class meets every week, the same time every day. But distance ed is most unique. Its flexible schedule's okay. E-course is a source, of course, of online assistance for lab reports. You're not enrolled in an online course? Sign up for this. You'll love distance ed. Toot, 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 toot. And that's what I have. All right. So anyway, that's my approach to teaching biochemistry, and my approach to what I think is going to be important for OSU and other universities to be thinking about as we move forward. So. Yep. Let me show you an example of that. I'm glad you brought that up, so let me see if I can pull this up really quickly. Yep, wrong one. I don't want that. I did this with the students earlier. So if I go to here and here. So my songs are called Metabolic Melodies, and there's 100. If you go to my webpage, there's 180 of them there. But this is one I sang with the grade schoolers before, and you'll see why I sang it with them. Okay, it's called the amino alphabet. Where's it at? Let me see it. No, that's wrong. Is it there? There it is, amino alphabet, yes. Okay. Yep.
just do? Come on. Well, I made the mistake when I was with these guys of trying. Oh, there it is. Okay, maybe that'll get around it. Okay, try one other thing. Melodies. There we go. Okay, so here it is. It's to the tune of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, right? And this is about the 20 amino acids that make up proteins. Lysine, arginine, and his basic ones you should not miss. Allelu, valyl, and methyl, aliphatic. So I teach this to my students in my first week of teaching biochemistry. Well, they all think it's kind of cute, all think it's kind of funny because, of course, that's how they learned the alphabet. But the amino alphabet is the 20 amino acids that make up proteins. There's 20 amino acids that make up proteins. There's 26 letters in the alphabet. They mesh well. So, you know, I commonly get that question, actually. I have heard people humming it. But there is a link, you know, in our heads between music and memory. You know, if you're, you know, you've been around as long as I have, you hear an old song, you think, oh, wow. It brings back memories of where you were when you first heard that song or when you used to listen to that song. So I think there's a very cool connection that's with that. So hopefully that works for people. But, yeah. Yep. And then it just all comes back, you know. No, and you know, I'll be honest that I won't claim that these make somebody learn biochemistry that wouldn't otherwise learn it, because they don't. All right. The reason I started doing the songs originally was because I wanted people to get over the fear component of biochemistry. If you say biochemistry to most students, they go, and anxiety is a terrible inhibitor of learning. And so if you cut through that with something, and that's why the songs are there. If you see your professor acting like an idiot singing something, he's not as quite as big and scary and hairy as he otherwise would be. That, I think, helps. Hopefully it helps. But anyway, that's more of the strategy for the songs than the actual learning component. Although, oh yeah. I've got one. I won't show it to you here, but it's to the tune of supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And it teaches, it's actually the step-by-step process of a complicated pathway called gluconeogenesis, which is the way that we make glucose in our body. And so it's the molecular basis of that. And there are 10 reactions that make that happen. And so this song takes them through that entire thing. It's actually my most popular song because it tells every step in the process that goes through that. So. Plus, it's a cute melody. I love the melody. So, but anyway, so thank you guys for your attention. I'm very happy to have you here. And yes, I appreciate the invitation to come up, Elvira. So thank you, and thank you, Gladys, also. So appreciate that very much. And thank you guys for asking a bunch of great questions. Okay, so anything else? I mean, cutting anybody off. Okay, I'll shut this down then. So. Okay, let's see. Oh, good question. So I've been teaching biochemistry. I started teaching biochemistry in 1995. And actually, I always can't do anything without telling a story. So I got to tell you a brief story about that. When I started teaching in 1995, I was very nervous about teaching biochemistry. My PhD's in biochemistry, but nonetheless, I was teaching for the first time with my PhD mentor. I got my degree at Oregon State. And so he was there teaching half the course with me. And the first day I went in, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to look like an idiot in front of my mentor, right? I'm just nervous as all get out. Well, it went well. And in fact, the whole term went very well. And during the term, the chairman of our department showed me a book that he had gotten back in the 60s. And it was called the Biochemist Songbook. And I saw that, and I thought, that's kind of a cool idea. You know, I wonder if I could write something like that, because I always like to do verses and that sort of stuff. And so at the end of that very first class, I thought, I'll try to write one. And so I wrote actually 2 songs for that class. And then nobody knew that I sang. So I came out that last lecture, and I started singing. You should have seen people in the room. They were just like this, right? And I loved the reaction. I thought, you know, this is kind of cool to do. And so that was how the songs actually got started. But that went from 95, so yeah, 20 years next year, I guess. That's kind of